Today we're looking at the stages of collapse again, but this time we're talking about the last three stages of collapse. So there was actually a book we talked about this last time in episode 3 that was written by Dmitry Orlov called The Five Stages of Collapse, and we talked about the first three. He actually said there was a sixth stage of collapse. It was environmental collapse. So he kind of added that as a thing after he wrote the book. So we're going to be talking about that today, and I think it's a really relevant topic for what the world is seeing right now, because he's talking about social and cultural collapse in stages 4 and 5. Hello, welcome to Collapse Curriculum Podcast. This is Justin McAffee, your host, on the 4th episode for 2025. Here we are with my co-host, Mike Paxinos. How you doing, Mike?
Good. Justin, how are you?
Pretty good. Are you ready to learn some depressing news?
Yeah, a lot of it is depressing, especially the article that we'll be talking about regarding the extinction. But yeah, let's get into it.
I'd like to start the show with thinking about what's in the headlines. We see at least a symptom of political collapse. There is a sense in which the trust that people have in government is at an all-time low. Mm-hmm. They don't trust either party. I think, like you said, Congress has an approval rating like gonorrhea or something like that.
Gonorrhea would be better.
It's funny because we all know it's true. And we can joke about it because that's what we do in life. We have to laugh.
Yeah, we do.
Of the absurdity. Yeah. And there's many reasons why that's happening, but I think even more important. So Dmitry Orlov would probably point to that as well. But then we also see very strange things happening. I think when I was a kid, I remember the first time a school shooting happened. It was Columbine, I think.
Columbine,
I don't know if it was the first one ever, but it was certainly the most notable and the most crass and just nihilistic.
Yeah. And the thing is, the interesting thing with that is that we have always had guns long before Columbine. So what was it that triggered Columbine as it's not like it was something that guns just appeared and then all of a sudden Columbine happened,
That is correct.
So it's something I think we need to look into. And regarding the shutdown, though, I want to ask you,
sure.
Is it political collapse, or is it in other words, what would be the difference between political collapse versus political dysfunction? We know our government's dysfunctional, but is that the same as collapse? So, for example, the post-Soviet Eastern Europe in the 1990s, their political system collapsed, but it also transitioned into a more functioning democracy. Maybe not. It took some time. They were obviously in an economic slump, but within a decade, it came about. But that's a political collapse. And I'm just wondering, is America in a dysfunction, or is it really a political collapse?
No, that's a great question. Dysfunction is a part of collapse. And, the question is, like, at what point does it just become collapse? Maybe the basic answer is this, that when there is a sudden and dramatic decline in that topic or that area, that and then extended, that is the definition of collapse. So I think with our political system, we've been seeing a more subtle but also kind of dramatic decline over time. So it's been less sudden, but that it could wind up becoming sudden, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So if there was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Usually a collapse is kind of defined by the steepness of the decline.
Okay. Yeah.
So what happens if it's more prolonged? Does that still collapse? I don't know. Maybe it's just decline. If it was just a government shutdown, that's happened before. It's not the end of the world. It's certainly not the end of the government. And I think that's one thing that that I remember reading in Orlov's work. He talked about how a lot of times collapse isn't the like the end of the thing, you know, like the government. The political collapse isn't necessarily the end of the government. It is its dysfunction, but in kind of a sudden dramatic decline and such. So
yeah. And so we probably want to ask then, what does decline look like in America? I mean, maybe it's not collapse, but what is the decline looking like as if we were on that road to the end? You know, what did it look like in Rome when they didn't know collapse was happening around them, but you know, you started to see an increase in poverty, an increase in the amount of basic needs that people could meet, just the people, that is, not the dignitaries. If we look at America, things are pretty tough to live now, you know, and prices are up, and a lot of that has to do with tariffs, but still, they were up before tariffs, you know, and, you know, people can't work 40 hours anymore and comfortably live. You need to have 2 incomes. So the basic needs are met, but just barely. I don't know, I think maybe there are signs, symptoms of a decline, I think. Full-on collapse, I don't know about that, but definitely a decline, I think, is starting.
Yeah, I think that there's been a decline in a lot of different measures that we could talk about. And that's what's neat about this framework. What I like about it is it kind of divides up indicators, you know. When we get to the 6th stage, which is environmental collapse, I mean, that's where it's interesting because that's just one element of collapse that we could talk about. And there's 1,000, if not 1,000,000 different aspects of the environment that we could talk about when it comes to collapse. And we won't. Orlov suggested that financial, commercial, and political collapse all happened in the Soviet Union, but they were able to weather those things. And like you said, it transitioned into something else. Now, I think today we are, as a globe, as a planet, facing numerous challenges that will affect all of us, including climate change, including the biodiversity crisis, ecological destruction, among other things. So it's a different level because, you know, he was talking about like a singular society, like his own, the Russian society. And one of the things that he said is once you start getting past political collapse into social and cultural collapse, you risk not being able to transition into something new.
Something better, too. Yeah.
You risk existential sort of collapse, you know, the end of a culture, or the end of... In this case, I think, from my perspective, and what I write about, we're talking about the potential for existential collapse for not only the human species, but innumerable species on the planet as well. There, you know, scientists are already calling what we're going through the 6th mass extinction. There's been 5 mass extinctions on the planet. The last one was 60 million years ago. There are scientists who are saying we are creating the 6th one right now. When we're talking about the stages of collapse, like social and cultural collapse, and I started to bring up some headlines, some topics like school shootings, because to me that is an indicator of probably cultural collapse. And you know, Orlov suggested that you don't really bounce back from total cultural collapse, or it's really not a good scenario to have, because basically the premise is you can survive financial, commercial, political collapse, even social collapse to some degree, if you have some cultural coherence, some things that provide meaning. Abraham Lincoln, he quoted the Bible at the beginning of the Civil War: "A house divided against itself cannot stand," right? There was a a reckoning that needed to occur on the matter of slavery. He basically said there cannot be a nation that is both free and slave. So sometimes this needs to happen. But the point is, if you don't have a nation, it's hard to maintain a nation or a culture if the culture doesn't have some coherence in its views on meaning and morality and good and bad, stuff like that. If there isn't a shared sense of meaning for a people nation-wise, that you will have violence. That's generally the case, right? If there are major differences within a culture, that can lead to collapse. I think the Civil War could be qualified as a collapse, or at least sort of temporarily. Where does this take us to today? I see divide, which is part of what I'm talking about. One thing I wanted to sort of highlight in all of this is that there's sort of a nihilism that I see. We've been seeing a lot of shootings, and a lot of them have become even more political. I don't know all the ins and outs of who did what with the Charlie Kirk assassination. But I think that you see, like, there was a man that, and I think it was Michigan near Flint, that drove his truck into a Mormon church and shot everyone up and killed people and burned the church down.
Yeah.
And I actually grew up Mormon, so there's people that just hate Mormons. I think this guy thought he had some sort of conspiratorial ideas about Mormons taking over.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that the man, and not only him, but so many other shooters, go into a place not thinking their own life is worth living. That's the only way that happens. And then turning a gun and fire onto other human beings.
Yeah.
With no real coherent sense of sort of like political gain from it. Like, you're not going to stop a Mormon takeover of, even if his like crazy ideas about Mormons were true, you're not going to stop that by going in and shooting up one building of one congregation. So it's not even a coherent belief. So I think it's nihilistic to do stuff like that. And I think what we're seeing is that there's more and more nihilistic people doing nihilistic things instead of doing things because they don't feel like there's any way to really change anything.
Yeah.
And that's the nihilism.
Well, voting hasn't really worked. They always tell you, well, make sure you vote. There's your voice. And I mean, things haven't really changed, with voting. You can protest. Obviously, we have a right to protest, but has things changed with protests? Do policies change? Do laws change? They're immoral laws. Do they change?
I think what I'm getting at, here's my premise. Civilization, especially industrial civilization, creates this situation. It erases meaning from our lives. It turns things that are important and real into money-making ideas. Like love. Oh, let me write a book about love. Let me write a song about love so I can make money.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Like online persona has replaced real connection in person with people. We could even say like civilization is really a long-term occupation of culture. And the pathology that's universal to it, it's not just in the United States, although it may be worse here than in a lot of places in terms of the lack of social cohesion or cultural cohesion here. But when we zap the meaning out of life with our dedication to technology and to economic growth, wealth, all of the things that are valued by, capitalist, modern industrial capitalism, then we take away our connection to place, to land, to ecology, to life, to the fundamentals of life.
Right.
How
I just want to ask, how would you recognize a cultural collapse like what you're talking about? And because I think the online thing contributes to it, and the phone, everything. But how do you recognize cultural collapse, and can you rebuild it once it's gone? What's American culture like, really? I mean, you got, you know what I'm saying? It's like how do you define a typical American? You just can't. We're all different, so different, and we don't even all look the same. You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering, how would you recognize if our society collapsed or our culture collapsed, American culture collapsed? How do you recognize it, and what do you do to rebuild it?
That's what the topic of my upcoming book is going to be, because I've talked about, first of all, step one is recognizing some of the myths of our culture that I talk about in my first book, The 10 Myths of Progress. So this is just in the last 40 years. We can go back much further and see signs of change, and then try to quantify the outcome. But in short, I think about when I was a kid, we would go riding around on our bikes all throughout the town, certainly in the neighborhood. We would find trails in the woods by the creek.
Yeah.
So
way back when in my day, let me tell you how.
We walked in the
snow and
both ways. I know. I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I can start talking about back in the day.
Yeah.
In my day, and those are great memories, because
yeah, they are.
There was a sense of like freedom with that.
Yeah.
And today, I think there's still kids that are doing that kind of stuff in some smaller towns and stuff. But for the most part, the point I'm getting at is that people don't trust their kids with their neighbors. They don't like their kids going outside.
No, it's
your
true.
neighbor could be a freaking pedophile.
Well, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
The richest people in the country that run it could be pedophiles, because
pedos. Yeah.
There's the Epstein files, right? We know this. And they're just not there, and the government's protecting them.
Yeah, it reminds me of
both parties.
Reminds me of the Vatican.
Yeah,
protecting the abusers.
These institutions that control things. I think one indicator for me is that we've come to the point where the institutions don't even seem to care whether you trust them or not. They're like, we don't care if you trust us. Do something about it.
Well, yeah.
What are you going to do?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. It's what are you going to do about it? Exactly. That's my question, though. It's like, what are we supposed to do if, like, how would we know a collapse happened? And let's say we do know. Well, what are we going to do when we have a military like ours or a government like ours? I mean, we just had. They can go federalize cities now. Well, not legally, but it doesn't matter anymore. They can just do it. Whether it's constitutional or not, I mean, we're supposed to believe in the Constitution, but they can go federalize a city now. Completely illegal, but they can do it. So it's like, what are we supposed to do if things get bad enough to where we can't trust the government anymore, and we don't even trust each other. We can't even have our kids go out and play with their neighbors anymore. So we can't trust each other. We don't trust the government. What's next? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a really good question too. And you have an industrial society with a huge military capable of doing whatever it wants, pretty much, in the world. I mean, the next sized military might be, I think ours is 20 times more funded than the next military down from us, from the United States. And I think that's the thing about industrial civilization, is that it has to grow and expand. It's like a Ponzi scheme, if it doesn't grow and expand, then it dies. And mathematically, that doesn't that's not sustainable. Eventually, you're going to run out of the space, unless you're going into space, which I think we're so far removed from. Collapse is probably something that is going to happen. If it's, I also say sometimes I say it's a process. It's happening right now. It's just not in its completed form, or whatever that means. You know what I mean? It's still in the process. So we're in it, but the worst is yet to come, kind of thing. And like I said, this is the rule, not the exception for societies. Societies are going to transform. But what's interesting about that, culturally speaking, because the Aboriginal people of Australia were there for 60,000 years, basically maintained a sustainable population and culture. There may have been some changes over that amount of time, but for the most part, they think that the culture remained pretty much intact. 60,000 years. Well, that's because, they didn't have private property. Mm-hmm. No one could own land. You had your personal items and stuff, of course. Yeah. But the goal of society wasn't to control land or control resources. It was to work together. And yeah, sure, there would be, between different tribes, there might be conflict over a body of water or whatever, a hunting ground or something like that.
But they were able to, for 60,000 years, they were able to self-govern.
Yes.
And can local communities, you think, here in America, you think we'll be able to do that? They were pretty good at it. They did it without technology and without, the luxuries we have. And property is very important to America. It's one of the things that it's inherent in us. So I'm just wondering, can local communities actually self-govern when the states fail? Would we in America be able to do that, like they did 60,000 years? Yeah.
Well, I think there's a transition period that occurs. Mm-hmm. There would be a lot of transition that would need to be occurred to get to the point that, but we can learn from that, and it can give us kind of a guidepost. It can give us a compass for what we're looking for. What I will say is that what we see every time there is regional or local collapse from natural disaster like Hurricane Katrina or something like that.
Right.
That's exactly what local places do. Local communities do rise up and manage themselves, even though they may be cut off from the outside world. So I do believe it's possible.
So I think a lot of it has to do with the people that we're dealing with at the time, the community. And I think they could too. I agree. You got to balance your mind out to survival and what that means.
Yeah, and I think when you're trying to survive, some of the issues that we find are less important. When everyone's just trying to survive, no one cares who you voted for. That's my point. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
I think I don't know how possible or likely this is to happen immediately or as things do get worse. But I would like to think, and this is why I'm writing my books, is that people can try to see that some of the commonality that they have with other people. Try to find meaning and morality that is, that's universal, because there are some, and I think we need cultural coherence.
How do you connect yourself? I guess because that's really these stuff really only sinks in until it personally affects you. Otherwise, it just seems to be theory, and it's hard to put it into an emotional connection with it. And I think we need to do that, not just research and read, but somehow, I don't know how. I don't want to just, make up some mock collapse so we can figure it out. But it's just that you have to agree, though. It's like if it's not happening to you, you're going to put it off. Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain extent, that's, I think, inevitable and unfortunate, but reality. We've tried to talk about some of these stages of collapse, and I think environmental collapse, being the sixth stage, is really rough because that does create a situation where we encounter the ecosystem services. That's what people characterize it as in human terms. Not the value of the ecosystem in and of itself. Humans tend to put value on nature in terms of how it benefits us, not its intrinsic value, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So, just like when they wrote the Constitution, they said, well, all men are created equal, but they only gave rights to white men for the most part to vote, to be able to, to have rights. Right. That's what those rights applied to. I bring that up because, what about the idea that nature has rights in and of itself, intrinsically? And I think a lot of more earth-centered cultures do. Mm-hmm. It's our culture that doesn't, because that would get in the way of progress. I think based on probably biblical passages, plus even the Enlightenment thinkers took this position that we want to put nature on the rack, dissect it, understand it, but it doesn't have feelings. It's just they're just objects. Yeah. Nature's just objects. Somehow we're really important. And in the Bible, there's this sense that God gave to man dominion over the earth. Yeah. For our benefit and purpose.
I think we misinterpreted that a little bit.
Yeah, because even in the biblical terms, someone who has stewardship over or dominion over has to exercise righteous dominion.
Right. There's certain discretion that's responsible for that.
Yeah, but I don't like the framework from the beginning. I just don't think it's helpful it's too much hubris for humans to believe. I think we should view ourselves as being responsible for taking care of the earth and not destroying it, for sure. But I think that's where we get into what I would call reciprocal relationship with nature as a kin. I think that's, even going back to like my Celtic ancestors or other indigenous societies, probably the Greeks before, maybe before civilization, people in that area would have had similar beliefs. Like there's this idea that the divinity is in all things. Viewing nature as kin would be a dramatic transformation for our society. It wouldn't be new for humans, for sure. But I think it's necessary if we're going to avoid what we're currently doing at an unprecedented, alarming rate. It seems unstoppable. That, I shared that article a few weeks ago where at the current rate of deforestation, there's no forest left on the planet in the next 100 to 200 years. Right. The old growth trees, most people don't have any idea how important those are. And we've, by the way, like in Oregon, where there's these beautiful forests here, but 90% of the old growth forests have been cut down.
Jeez,
in the last couple 100 years. 90%.
Wow.
So, the ones that remain are scattered and just few and far between. And
are there any laws protecting what you do have up there yet? I mean,
not greatly. There's some places that are protected, but there's a lot of places that have old growth forests that they're still trying to log. Biden refused to do anything about it. Trump is accelerating it.
That must also, when you have that kind of level of deforestation, it must really wreck the soil of what you can grow up there, right?
It wrecks, yeah, definitely. It wrecks the soil. It even affects the rivers because you get more sediment in the rivers. It affects the temperature of the rivers. And all of that is going to affect how many salmon there are. Like there's a river here nearby that used to have hundreds of thousands of salmon. Like they say there was so many salmon you could walk across the river on top of their backs.
Really?
Yeah. Now there's 5,000 to 10,000 salmon that run. So that's just one example of what's been impacted. Here we are. This is Google Earth. Here's my home state of Oregon. Let's just take a look. Do you see all of this?
That's
Those
the
little
deforestation.
checkerboards?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's the deforestation.
Wow.
And it's basically, everywhere. This is up in the national forest. It's a little bit less square. But it's just like these patches like that. But then a lot of it is literally like a checkerboard.
Jeez.
They would just clear cut this whole square, this one, and they just leave these little patches. And trees that are 50 to 100 years old versus trees that are 500 years old or more.
Right.
The root systems, the nutrients that the old trees put back into the soil, it all gets ruined.
Jeez.
So it's a major, ecological problem. Yes, because it is renewable technically, right? The trees will grow back, but you're destroying an ecosystem and you're creating a tree plantation is essentially what you see in Oregon here for the most part. There's some old growth forests, 10% of it. The other 90% are monocrop tree plantations. That's essentially what they are. Now you can go hiking and hunting them and stuff too, but
Is this also spilling into Seattle area too?
yeah.
Is it? Oh, okay.
absolutely. You have, let's see. Okay, so it goes up into Canada too. Where are we? There's Portland. Okay. So this is Washington. You can see it all over Washington too.
Yeah. Wow.
This is Olympic Peninsula here. Where's Seattle?
What about the east? Is it the same way with the East Coast? The Pennsylvania?
It's everywhere.
New York? It's everywhere, huh?
Like if you go, so let's go back east. Look at like South Dakota. Every
Well,
bit of
there's
it
nothing there.
is farm. It's just all farm. You see the little squares? That's not natural. I think you said it in our first episode. Squares or perfect spheres, squares. You
Yeah.
don't typically see these things in nature.
No,
these are all
not
farms,
Wow.
and basically all of this stuff. Look at that. You can see the grid lines.
Jeez.
That's probably
Wonder what-
Oklahoma, I'm guessing.
Before these farms, like hundreds of years ago, what were these all? Was that the? Was that how it always was? That's just the nature of it, or was it flourishing green before, like hundreds of years?
Yeah,
was it
these are some of this is prairie, like Iowa. It's going to be grasslands. There would have been millions of buffalo,
No.
and it was a food system for look at here, it's Sioux City. There you go. It's a lot of Sioux names over here, even though these are really Lakota. Probably Sioux is kind of a derogatory name, but yeah, and that's what It's interesting because you go to Wisconsin, you go up to the Michigan Northern Peninsula. It's actually better than a lot of places. There's still some places here that haven't been completely, overrun by humans.
Jeez.
But as you get down into here, you can see this all used to be forest here, and you can see they've just carved it out for
Yeah.
people and stuff. And go down here to the south, it's the same way. Every little bit of this, there's little patches. Again, I've looked at numbers, and you see that there's whatever forests are still left, like maybe this little patch right here. A lot of times that is going to be like timberland that people use for, selling lumber. And you can kind of see this whole area of the South, Georgia, Carolinas. Just you can see it's just all been chopped up
Jeez.
by farms
Yeah.
and stuff. And this is true pretty much everywhere. You go to the Amazon and you can see it's There's some places there, but Europe is gone. I mean, Europe is just
Yeah.
the entire place has just been chopped up.
Oh,
There's hardly anything left there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How much money has been made off of that? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think the British Empire chopped down all the trees on the island on Britain to build their fleets to sail around the world and conquer it. So that's why there's no trees left there. There's some trees growing. I was in Scotland this summer, and there's definitely some efforts being made to restore some of the ecosystems, some of the forests and stuff like that, which is great. But it's, compared to what it was, it's a minuscule thing. But
Yeah. Jeez. That's pretty scary. I mean, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. That's pretty bad. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk, because that reminds me of the article that you sent.
Yeah.
What was the name
I think
of
it's a
that?
good place to start that.
Yeah, it's so it's incredible. I mean, it's scary, but I think it's very telling. And essentially, from what I was reading from that article, is that we humans have really accelerated extinction of other species, not just mammals, but it could be insects, fungi, bacteria, anything it's all important. Today they measure that to be 1,000 times faster, which is now went from 0.1 to 100. And I think when you're reading this thing, that makes it, to bring it more down to earth, is you look at this as a rate, meaning, like, for example, 60 miles per hour, right? You're not always going 60 miles per hour. I mean, it could be 30 miles per hour. You could be going 80 miles per hour. We're just talking on average, right? And so that's the average rate right now that we're going at, is 100,000 times faster than it was before humans. If you look at this in that analogy, it's like saying you went 60 miles per hour to now moving 60,000 miles per hour.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's 1,000. That's 1,000 times. And that's, 60,000 miles an hour just is so fast. That's twice the exit velocity, more than twice the exit velocity of leaving Earth. You got to go, a rocket has to go a minimum of 25,000 miles an hour in order to leave its orbit. Can you imagine you're driving 60 miles per hour? It's nice. You have control. There's a scenery. You can focus, and you can pretty much be free and do what you want. But at 60,000 miles an hour, it's a blur. It's too late. You can't do anything. You just have to sit there and relax and enjoy the burn up, because that's really it. You're not going to be able to do anything with that. But the thing is, why don't we feel it, though? That's the question, right? Like, okay, so how come every species that's extinct has some kind of important thread in the overall ecology? So how come we really don't feel it? It's like, well, again, out of sight, out of mind. We would know if elephants went extinct, but you're not going to know if some insect that you never heard of went extinct, even though it's just as important as an elephant when it comes to ecology is concerned. When we accelerate Mother Nature that much, Mother Nature is going to take it back one way or another, and it probably is going to end up with us causing our own extinction from it.
Either way, what we know is that conservatively, and it's probably accelerating, that we've increased the extinction rate of species by 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And we've looked at the map some today and seen, and you can do this yourself, just go on Google Maps or Google Earth on the satellite and just scroll around and see what is natural that's left.
Right.
It's said that the main driver was habitat destruction. Like I said, I think there's a reckoning with reality and this culture. That's going to happen. That's why, I don't usually frame this discussion about whether or not collapse is going to occur, because you're making the argument here for me. People don't see these things happening, and they're not reacting to it. So
until it's too late, and then
right.
Yeah, and it's
and even if they did, they would be up against a hegemony of the the powers that be, the ruling class that make their money. And what we're already seeing is prices going up, supplies going down, and crackdowns of authoritarianism, right? You're seeing cities being occupied by the military. The surveillance state is growing enormously. To all the, freedom-loving right-wingers out there, they're not, I know that you believe that this is being done on your behalf to protect you, but it's going to be used against you too, because they're creating, the Patriot Act is one of the steps they took, but now they got AI, now they got drones.
Yeah.
They're it's a surveillance state. And I think my experience, and I think the reason why my Substack has grown the way it has, which isn't like enormous, but there are people, it's just becoming more mainstream for people. It used to be like conspiratorial, far right wing extremist groups that were prepping, preppers.
Yeah, preppers. Yeah. Yeah, I remember
preparing for doomsday, shit hits the fan, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But now it's a lot more, there's climate preppers, that's what they're calling themselves, or people on the left side of things that are doing prep work or trying to reconnect to the land and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I think, just briefly to reconnect our conversation about the stages of collapse, is that there is a thing called bioregionalism. Maybe we can do an episode about bioregionalism in the future, which is, a way of forming and organizing communities that's rooted in connection to the land, to the ecology, and identity too. So it's not just political, but it's also cultural and social, which is, let's say, rather than identifying ourselves with like our pocketbook or our job, what if or even like an arbitrary flag with stripes on it and stars?
Mm-hmm.
What if our identity, because I don't know, the American identity is pretty new. It's old enough to where people definitely vibe it, they feel it, but it's problematic. So like, let's say, what if we identified with the landscape that we lived in? Like here in the Pacific Northwest, there's this idea called Cascadia, which is bioregionalism, where the watersheds and the common forests, so like British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon, and parts of Northern California, maybe even parts of Alaska, are part of a bioregion that has commonality. Fish, we have common fish. We have common, like the Douglas fir is the tree that's on the flag of Cascadia. So it's just this idea for the most part, but it's an identity. It's rooted in place rather than in other concepts. So maybe we can talk about that in the future.
Sure. Yeah.
This is an opportunity at the end of our podcast to talk about something that maybe that's positive in the world. The ecology in Mother Nature can get better. Satellite images of Ukraine since the war. The war has left, villages abandoned, factories, machines, just vast areas where there isn't any people anymore. And the land is coming back in those places. Like there's prairies and steppe grass that are coming back. There's wild boar, wolves, cranes, things like that. And so it gives you the sense that when people get out of the way and let nature do its thing, that it does come back. It renews.
It does. It does. It just does it on its own time, not ours. That's the thing.
That is true. A lot of times we're impatient. We need it to happen now, and so then we add whatever to it, to the mix, which makes it worse. But this has been relatively quick. I mean, the Ukraine war hasn't been going on that long. Even during the pandemic, when cities were kind of shut down a little bit, the air started to clear, and animals started returning to areas in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah.
I think you see this also in like Chernobyl, in the area around Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, yeah.
Even despite the nuclear fallout, nature
Yes.
has returned to that area.
Yeah, I still wouldn't go. I don't care.
I mean, I'm not saying I would. No, not without a Geiger counter. But the point is, like, sometimes the best thing for the renewal of nature, though, is going to be for people to get out of the way, for humans
Yeah.
to stop doing the big human things.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe collapse, in a way, is going to be part of the cure.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I would like to kind of leave people with this discussion, and I'm going to write more about this on my Substack, but this idea of, especially at the local level, where people survive collapse, where people survive disasters at a local level, is because people come together and they help each other
Yeah.
with the basic necessities of life.
Yeah.
I think it's important to prepare for that now. In fact, here's what I'll say. Perhaps it is more important to build local networks and cohesion than it is to store cans of beans and water
Yeah.
in some storage shed. Because that's just only going to last so long, or it can be taken from you by people with guns.
Right.
But people working together locally can find ways to survive.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think you might want to think about, what does that look like? Are there people that you can trust to work with? Because there will be vacuums, and there will be people who don't act in good faith, and you got to have people you can trust.
Right.
So rather than focusing on all the distrust and the division in the greater society, my challenge assignment for this week is to go out and to work on this social and cultural revolution that we need. That could be, reconnecting with someone that that we're watching movies, we're playing video games, or we're working a lot, we're scrolling.
Yeah.
Maybe reconnect with someone that you used to talk to more. Reach out to them, talk, share stories, share skills, rebuild the small bonds that make life worth living.
Yeah. I agree.
Thanks everyone for watching the Collapse Curriculum podcast. This is Justin McAfee and Mike Paxanos saying goodbye and thank you.
Bye-bye.